It's 2026, and the Mexican national team is facing down 80,000 screaming fans, decades of historical failure weighing on their shoulders, and just out of nowhere, a massive thunderstorm.
Right, which sounds like an absolute nightmare scenario for any team.
Exactly. But the craziest part, their biggest advantage that night, the thing that really won them the game, was actually a mandatory water break.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive when you phrase it that way, but you are entirely right.
It's wild.
It is. When you look at the actual mechanics of how this match unfolded, the elements that should have completely derailed Mexico actually became the exact tools they used to dismantle their opponent.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating transcript from the YouTube channel BPC Media. They did this massive breakdown of the round of 32 match between Mexico and Ecuador at the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
And we should clarify, we aren't just doing a standard play-by-play recap today.
No, not at all. We are looking at this source material to understand the underlying mechanics of human performance under extreme pressure. So what this match actually teaches you about psychological resilience, tactical shifts, and, carrying the burden of history.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that this match is a masterclass in how chaos-like environmental delays, tactical recalibrations, emotional regulation, how all of that dictates outcomes on a massive global stage.
And the stakes, they couldn't be higher. In knockout football, it's totally binary.
Right. You either win and advance to the round of 16, or you lose, you pack your bags, and you watch the rest of the tournament on television. There is zero margin for error.
Which is something I think you, listening to this, can probably relate to, right? Think of any high-stakes make-or-break moment in your own life where you just cannot afford a single mistake. That's the energy here. So let's set the scene. We are at the historic Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. You've got 80,000 eager fans packed into this venue. The teams step onto the pitch, the anthems are sung, the tension is just palpable, and then the sky just completely breaks open.
A biblical thunderstorm.
Literally. It just parks itself right over the stadium. You've got heavy downpours, intense lightning, and the officials are forced to delay the start of the match for over an hour.
Which, honestly, is an incredibly destabilizing event for a professional athlete.
Okay, let me stop you right there because that is exactly what I want to unpack. I kind of view this like a pressure cooker, right? If you or I are all keyed up for a huge moment like, say, a major presentation at work, and suddenly they tell us, just sit in this holding room for an hour.
You'd lose your mind.
Right. The adrenaline wears off. Your body crashes. You get lethargic. So why did this massive weather delay actually make the atmosphere more electric and intense for the Mexican fans and the players?
Well, it really comes down to the physiology of adrenaline. And interestingly, the physical architecture of the stadium itself.
Oh, really? The architecture?
Yeah, so usually a delay like this triggers a parasympathetic response. Your body realizes, okay, the threat or the big event isn't happening right now, so it forces you to calm down. You lose your edge.
Right, you just sort of deflate.
Exactly. But the Estadio Azteca is constructed like this massive enclosed bowl. It acts almost like a giant parabolic reflector for sound.
Wow, okay. So the sound literally can't escape.
Precisely. The storm physically trapped all that anticipation inside the Coliseum. And rather than dispersing or, getting bored and losing that collective energy, the fans started singing and chanting just to stay warm and engaged.
And that builds up.
It creates this intense acoustic feedback loop. The sound waves are literally reverberating back onto the pitch. So the Mexican players sitting in the locker room aren't experiencing silence and a physiological crash. They're sitting there hearing a continuous, deafening wall of sound.
That is incredible.
It keeps their sympathetic nervous system, that fight-or-flight response, just fully engaged for an entire hour. They harness that anxiety rather than letting it freeze them.
That makes a lot of sense. They are just fermenting in that kinetic energy, and you see it in the transcript. The moment the weather finally clears and the referee blows the whistle, Mexico comes out playing with just extreme purpose and great speed.
They are completely riding that wave of atmospheric electricity. They're passing rapidly, pinning Ecuador deep in their own territory.
But, and this is crucial, Ecuador doesn't just roll over.
No, not at all. When a team faces that kind of overwhelming external pressure, basic survival instincts take over. Ecuador absorbed that initial chaotic wave and then countered with sheer physicality.
And they almost completely flipped the script. There's this terrifying counterattack where the Ecuadorian attacker, John Wiboa, finds a gap in Mexico's high line, breaks through, and hits a powerful left-footed shot.
And it hits the outside of the post.
Yes, an inch to the right, and the entire narrative of this game changes immediately.
And that right there is the ultimate test of psychological resilience.
Yeah.
I mean, you have 80,000 fans screaming for you. You have all this momentum. And then suddenly you realize you just narrowly escaped a deficit. It's a sharp cognitive shock.
Yeah, and most teams would instinctively pull back after a scare like that, right? They'd play a bit more defensively just to regain their bearings and survive.
But Mexico doesn't flinch.
They don't. They lean right back into the risk, and it pays off massively in the 22nd minute. This first goal is just a tactical beauty. Mexican defender Gallardo gets the ball deep in his own half, and he spots forward Julian Quinones, who is actually noted as Quinones in some of the source translations making this run.
Right, and Gallardo launches this gorgeous, sweeping, long pass from his own half that bypasses everything.
But the execution here is what's so crazy.
It is, because to really appreciate it, we have to dissect what Ecuador was doing defensively. Ecuador was utilizing an offside trap.
Which, just for context, means the defenders are trying to step forward in unison, right?
Exactly. It's a highly synchronized defensive movement. As the pass is about to be played, the entire defensive line steps forward together, hoping to strand the attacking forward behind them, which is an offside rule violation.
It's a trap.
Right. It is a highly effective tactic, but it requires absolutely flawless coordination.
And Quinones just completely shatters it.
He does. Because beating an offside trap isn't just about foot speed. It is a serious cognitive test. You have to anticipate the exact millisecond the defender's going to launch the ball and time your sprint so you're perfectly level with the last defender when the ball is struck.
But you're at top speed and they're standing still or moving the opposite way.
Exactly. Quinones processes that geometry perfectly.
He beats the trap, catches up to the sweeping pass outside the penalty area, drives a hard shot past the goalkeeper, Hernan Galindez, and just buries it in the bottom right corner. 1-0.
The stadium absolutely loses its mind. It is a textbook capitalization on early chaos.
But then we hit another huge variable. The heavy heat is really taking a toll, so the officials signal for a mandatory hydration break. And this is where my initial pushback comes in.
Okay, let's hear it.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. If you have ever been in a pure flow state, like you are typing out a great report, the ideas are connecting flawlessly, and someone interrupts you for a mandatory meeting, you know how hard it is to get that rhythm back.
Oh, it's brutal.
Right. So usually a mandatory rest period like a hydration break breaks a team's attacking momentum. How did Mexico come out of that break refusing to slow down and actually immediately force a catastrophic error?
That is the logical assumption, right?
Yeah.
But it ignores the sustained psychological pressure that the opposition is carrying.
Yeah.
Ecuador was visibly rattled by that first goal. The hydration break gave Ecuador's players a moment to stop reacting and start thinking. And in a high-pressure deficit, thinking often leads to overthinking.
Oh, wow. So the mandatory rest period actually worked against the team that supposedly needed it most.
Yes. Mexico used the pause to just stay clinical and solidify their mental dominance, while Ecuador used it to internalize all their anxiety. And you see the immediate result in the 31st minute, right after they get back on the pitch.
Yeah, it's almost instant. The Ecuadorian center back, Joel Ordonez, gets the ball under pressure and just makes this baffling, unforced error. He completely scuffs a basic clearance kick.
It's pressure, yeah.
Leaves the ball totally loose right in the danger zone.
I want to point out that isn't just clumsiness. That is decision fatigue compounded by heat and stress. His brain and his feet are temporarily out of sync because he is frantically processing the deficit, the deafening crowd, and the Mexican attackers closing in on him.
And Mexico's Raul Jimenez instantly punishes him for it. Jimenez intercepts the loose ball, passes it to Quinones. Quinones plays a perfect return pass right back to him, and Jimenez just blasts a right-footed shot into the absolute top corner. 2-0.
And we really need to highlight the contrast in cognitive processing on that specific play.
You mean between Ordonez's massive mistake and Jimenez's execution?
Exactly. They are both operating in the same heavy heat, under the same deafening noise, in the same high-stakes environment. But Ordonez suffers a total mechanical breakdown under pressure, while Jimenez executes a flawless give-and-go.
Yeah, the give-and-go is so fast.
It is. You pass the ball and immediately sprint to a new space to receive it back. It exploits human reaction time. It requires you to think 2 steps ahead of a defender who is already struggling to process step 1. That second goal just proves that at the elite level, mental sharpness is the ultimate separator.
Wow. So halftime arrives. Mexico has this massive 2-goal lead, and Ecuador looks visibly worried. And when the second half begins, we see a complete paradigm shift.
A totally different game.
Yeah. Ecuador realizes their World Cup dreams are slipping away, so they desperately push forward, trying to control more midfield possession. Mexico, on the other hand, protecting their valuable lead, drops much deeper into their own half, actively sacrificing possession.
They transition from a high-speed tactical blitz into a compact defensive wall.
But let me push back on this strategy, though, because changing from a sports car to a fortified castle dropping that deep seems like a dangerous gamble. And in the 75th minute, that strategy almost backfires.
Right, the Kevin Rodriguez champs.
Exactly. Rodriguez slides past the central defense and rolls a quick shot just an inch wide of the far post, just an inch away from completely changing the momentum. Doesn't that prove that turtling up like that is too risky?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, in knockout tournaments, survival often requires abandoning beautiful attacking football for pure grit. You have to separate process from outcome.
Okay, explain that.
The process of dropping deep wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated bet on their specific personnel. Mexico knew that Ecuador's primary method of attacking was getting the ball out wide and lofting dangerous crosses into the penalty box. So Mexico compacted the center of the field, effectively saying, fine, take the sides.
Because they knew their defense could handle the crosses.
Exactly. They forced them out wide and relied on their center backs to act like a brick wall. And that is where Cesar Montes had the game of his life.
Oh, yeah. The transcript highlights Montes heavily. He used his height and positional awareness to head away almost every single dangerous cross that came in.
And you can't ignore the young Mexican goalkeeper, Luis Angolang.
Right. He was repeatedly coming out into heavy traffic and punching away these dangerous looping corner kicks just to protect his clean sheet.
And that individual authority, the decision to punch rather than try to catch, is crucial. An in-swinging corner kick is a nightmare. You have a wet ball, swirling wind, and 6 players jumping directly in front of you.
Trying to catch it is just begging for a fumble.
Exactly. Angling aggressively punching the ball physically removes the danger, but it also psychologically demoralizes the Ecuadorian attackers.
Right.
They realize they can't even get near the ball.
So, as the clock ticks down, Ecuador runs out of creative ideas to break through this fortified castle. Their tactical frustration really begins to curdle into intense physical anger. The game gets scrappy.
Extremely scrappy.
And it all boils over, setting the stage for an explosive stoppage time. The referee adds 7 minutes to the end of the game.
Which is a fascinating psychological space. When you are winning, 7 minutes of extra time feels like an absolute eternity. When you are losing, it feels like a ticking time bomb.
And in the 95th minute, we hit the meltdown. It's an off-the-ball clash. Play is happening elsewhere, but the cameras catch Ecuadorian defender Pierre Hinapier and Mexican substitute striker Santiago Jimenez getting into it. They lock eyes, go head-to-head, arguing loudly.
And then comes the moment of pure, unadulterated petulance.
Yeah. Hinapier puts his hand over his mouth to hide his lips and makes this abusive, derogatory gesture toward Jimenez.
But he forgets the cameras are everywhere.
Right. The broadcasting cameras catch it perfectly. But here's the detail that really sticks out to me. He put his hand over his mouth. Doesn't that show premeditation rather than just a total loss of control? He had the presence of mind to try and hide it.
I completely agree. It shows he knew exactly what he was doing. But it backfired entirely because of the strict new conduct rules implemented for the tournament regarding abusive language and gestures.
The referee catches it, dismisses all the protests, and shows a straight, ruthless red card to Hinapier. Just sends him off in absolute disgrace.
And that disciplinary meltdown formally extinguished any miraculous comeback hopes Ecuador had left.
Because down 2 goals with 2 minutes left is hard enough. Down 2 goals, missing a player is basically impossible.
It proves that emotional regulation is just as critical as physical stamina on the world stage. Hinapier's inability to control his frustration didn't just get him ejected. It structurally broke his team when they needed a coordinated tactical push the most.
And with Ecuador self-destructing in those final moments, the final whistle blows. Mexico secures the definitive 2-0 victory. And the emotional contrast on the pitch is just incredible.
It really is.
You have the Mexican players dancing, hugging, chanting with their fans, and the Ecuadorian players have just collapsed onto the pitch in tears. But for Mexico, this whistle didn't just signal the end of a 90-minute match. It signaled the end of a decades-long historical burden.
Right. The broader context here is massive.
The source outlines 2 huge milestones they achieved. First, they finally broke the historic, decades-long curse of the 4th game to advance.
Which is huge.
It is. For decades, Mexico has routinely been eliminated in the round of 16, the fourth game. And second, they became the first team since Italy in 1990 to win their first 4 World Cup matches without conceding a single goal.
Tying that 1990 Italian record is profound. That Italian team is historically revered for their defensive perfection.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you overcome a curse that has lasted for decades?
Well, synthesizing all of this, it shows that the curse of the fourth game wasn't magic, right? It was a psychological barrier. Mexico overcame it not just with offensive bursts, those 2 quick goals, but with absolute defensive perfection, echoing that 1990 Italy squad.
Right.
True historic milestones are usually achieved through disciplined defense and emotional control under pressure. You break a curse by controlling the variables you can and exploiting the chaos you can't.
That is a perfect summary. So Mexico navigated a literal storm, executed a tactical blitz, survived a defensive siege, and maintained their emotional discipline while their opponents completely unraveled, ultimately making international history.
But before we wrap up, there is one final thought I want to leave everyone with, building on that 95th minute red card incident.
Oh, the hand over the mouth.
Exactly. If broadcasting cameras and strict new conduct rules can now catch a hidden gesture behind a player's hand, how will this era of total surveillance permanently alter the psychological warfare and trash talk that have always been an invisible part of professional sports?
Wow. Yeah, if you can't even hide behind your own hand anymore, it changes the entire dynamic on the field. That is a fascinating thought to mull over. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the bigger picture, and we will catch you next time.